Is Nico the fix for Josh Heupel? Prior to 2023, Josh Heupel's 5 straight seasons of top 8 offenses. Is Nico that answer to get Tennessee back where it needs to be, to get Josh Heupel's offense back where it needs to be? It probably is. We'll get into that and more here on a Friday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. It is your team every single day because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Got Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider on with me today as my vacation continues. We're going to talk Nico, going to talk basketball, we're going to talk baseball. We're going to hit a little bit of everything, the big three here for Tennessee sports, because, Ryan, as we were mentioning, man, crossover season's about to be here.
Yes, it is, and it's a good time to be getting vacation. I was actually thinking about that when you reached out, because it's going to be 4 months full speed of Tennessee baseball, and a little bit slower in the summer. But obviously by that time it's full blown Tennessee football time, and won't be too long till fall camp gets going.
It was funny, my family and friends and same for you. I mean, they kind of know your schedule and everything, but there's really only like 2 pockets out of the year. For me, for you, it's not even that much. So when football is over, I have a little pockets. During bowl season, you're doing some things. And then in January, where I'm not doing much, I'm just kind of chilling, writing stories. I mean, you're covering basketball. And then, as you mentioned, once baseball starts mid-February, if your team's good, I mean, you're locked up every weekend through, I mean, like last year, the end of June, right? And then you get like a month, and then it's fall camp. So, like, there's not a whole lot of downtime. And plus, even that month after the baseball season, it's still transfer portal season, so you're still working like crazy. So, it's wild, but again, I know you wouldn't, and I definitely wouldn't have it any other way.
No doubt. It's funny thinking about, because that was really, Tony Vitello's second year was the first year I covered it, which was the first year they got back in the NCAA tournament. But it's, crazy to think about how early it ended before, because, so many of those pre-Vitello teams didn't make the SEC tournament. So they're done in mid-May, basically. And, at that point, you feel like you're just getting ready for the real thing, especially years like it last year when Tennessee was heading on the road for the tournament.
Yeah, the world was coming to an end when Tennessee was one and done in Hoover, and in baseball. Again, we'll talk baseball in segment number 3, but that's not always the worst case, right? When one and done in the SEC tournament. All right, let's talk football here to leave things off. It was one game, right? And we say we're not going to overhype it and all that, but as fans, as sports fans and the media, covering this team, it's fun to watch. He was fun to watch. I don't think we can say that he is the chosen one, like Hendon Hooker put out there after one game. But your thoughts on Nico? Kind of a lot to like there against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl.
Well, I'll start with, what's the not sexy part. And that's, what I kind of said going into the game is, obviously everybody wants to see the exciting from him and the big plays and some of that making stuff kind of off script happen. But for that game, it was like with Iowa's offense, you just want a guy that's a quarterback to not make a bunch of mistakes, not do dumb things, manage the game well. And obviously that's not what anybody wants to see from Nico, but that was the most important thing to Tennessee winning the Citrus Bowl. And that's what he did. And obviously Tennessee's defense more than held up their end of the bargain. And, some of that stuff was made easier. And, we saw Josh Heupel coach some stuff kind of conservative early in the second half, not forcing things going for it. But, Nico didn't put the ball in harm's way at all. And a few mistakes, taking the sack in the 2-minute drill is the one that really kind of stands out, that you see a freshman mistake. But from just a managing the game standpoint, I thought he did a really good job. And that's something that's going to be important, especially for him as a young quarterback. You always knew he would grow into that. But how much of that comes naturally to him, I thought was a question. And again, you win by 28 points, or I guess 35 points. That makes it easier to manage the game. And then what we had seen from him in the limited amount that we had seen earlier in the season that he'd played, what he'd thrown the ball like 27 times, played briefly in 4 games. But I think the thing, at least to me, that stood out the most is just his escapability and his ability to make things happen off script and when plays break down. And, that was readily apparent too, and really impressive. So to see him do that for a full game was encouraging, and to see him do it against a, by far much better defense than he had played at any point in the regular season was encouraging. And then I think maybe the thing that surprised me the most was the way they just used him in the design run game and the amount of times we saw that. And, I think Iowa's defense certainly good. I think in some ways they maybe made him look faster than he is, but he's super quick twitchy and super quick. And in a lot of ways, I think that almost makes him the anti-Joe Milton, where Joe Milton, he gets out straight line speed, super fast guy, but
Yeah.
not necessarily elusive and slippery. So certainly, like you said, just one game. They didn't ask him to do a ton because they won in blowout fashion and their defense played so well, but certainly a lot to like.
Yeah, a couple things you mentioned that I really, am super excited about seeing Nico being Tennessee's quarterback is that off script escapability stuff. We saw that play in the orange and white game. Ethan Davis was so good in his brief mop up duty times in 4 games. He made a couple plays on the run and was able to think and operate out of the pocket. And we saw that a couple times against Iowa. He wasn't fantastic through the air, but there was one play where, and a couple of drops, and if Ramel Keaton didn't bail on a route, maybe those numbers look even better. But there was one play where he sprinted out of the pocket and hit back shoulder Ramel Keaton down the sideline in the Citrus Bowl. And I'm like, man, those are the types of plays that we haven't seen in a while, and I'm excited to see kind of what happens there. And I'm with you. I'll be intrigued to see, was it more against Iowa that, at the end of the day, Tennessee's offense scored 21 points, okay? James Pierce scored a touchdown, then James Pierce gave the football to Tennessee on the 4-yard line. So it's not like Tennessee's offense just dominated. They did a lot of what you said. They did enough, didn't make mistakes, ran the football, did all that type of stuff. But maybe it was just against Iowa to where they had given up only 4 rushing touchdowns all year, but the commitment to the design runs, 2 design runs for touchdowns, really, really impressive. And you get that extra blocker in there and, Nico's ability to go and make those plays. I'm intrigued to see if maybe that's something that they carry on into next season, or if it was just against Iowa, or, maybe they're hesitant not to do that because of your backup quarterback situation or being a true freshman, or maybe even gassing more.
Well, I think you'll particularly see it, and it's intriguing in the red zone because that was the staple of it. Obviously, they used Hendon Hooker. It wasn't like they never used him in the design run game out of red zone, but that's where they really liked it. They loved that speed option in the red zone, and we saw a little bit of that this year with Joe Milton, but not as much. And, obviously it did happen at Missouri where they fumbled it, and I guess they were able to jump on it. But even the ones that went well, some of those Joe Milton speed options were a little bit of an adventure. So, no, you're right. And the numbers were pedestrian, but at the same time, it was 19 pass attempts. And like you said, a couple drops in there. They just didn't throw the ball a ton. And even in the second half, it is 21 points, and that's something I harped on. But they played everything very conservative, and you get 2 drives like that, and you get a pick 6. They just weren't on the field a bunch in the second half either. So, it's such a small sample size. One thing I thought you saw a lot more of in the bowl game that you maybe didn't see in the regular season was just those kind of deep 10, 15-yard comeback routes that are such a staple of the Josh Heupel offense. And it wasn't that we never saw them this year, but certainly usage was way down compared to the first 2 seasons with Hendon Hooker. We saw that a ton. That's probably the most successful pass play they had in that game, or at least something they went back to time and time again. And, obviously the 7 sacks is something that people talked about, and I mentioned it earlier. I thought he had the real bad one in the 2-minute drill, but a lot of those sacks, what I've started calling the Hendon Hooker sack, where you get sacked, but you read it well and you lose a yard or 2, and it doesn't kill the drive. So many Tennessee sacks in regular season were 5, 6, 7-yard losses, and Tennessee's offense just wasn't really built to overcome that. So I don't think that sack number, certainly wasn't a great game pass protection wise for Tennessee's offensive line, but I don't think that was maybe as negative as of an indictment on the offensive line or on, Nico for holding the ball too long as you might think by just seeing the number.
Sit here, mid-January right now, and the offensive line's still trying to work through some things. You get that, and this team is still trying to hit it winter workouts. We're not even to spring practice yet. But what do you like about this team? Just way too early glance. Tennessee in 2024.
Well, I would say it's really, to me, it starts at the defensive line. I think they're going to be really good there again. If anything, I think they will be better. Obviously, Tyler Barron is a tough loss. He was a productive player, but you look at some of the young guys that Tennessee has on their roster, I think they'll be able to step up into that role, especially, as pure pass rushers. I think Tennessee's third down pass rush package should be even better next year, and I think they'll continue to be solid there. And I think there's a lot of excitement also with the linebacker room of just, you had a lot of talent there. I like that room this year in the sense that you had a lot of young guys that were talented, and then all those guys were thrust into much bigger roles. To have Keenan Peely back, obviously you didn't have him at all this year. You lose Aaron Beasley, but to me that feels somewhat of a 1-for-1 comparison. We'll see exactly what level Peely plays at, and all those guys being a year older. And offensively, I think there's a good bit of question marks, but you saw in the bowl game, even without Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, this should be an offense that runs the ball really well again. And to me, I guess the big question, and it's, the question can oftentimes be used as a negative or like a knock, and a lot of times it is. Like, I got a lot of questions about Tennessee's safety play or safety room next year, and I'm not very optimistic about it. But I have questions about Tennessee's receiver room, and I'm not necessarily negative on it. It's just, can some guys take a jump, and can Tennessee find somewhat of a true number one, or just have more solid, balanced options? And certainly, Brew McCoy not being injured last year hurt Tennessee, but I don't think he was just the end all be all answer. And you're glad to have him back, but it's not just I don't think just Brew McCoy is going to fix all the issues Tennessee had in the receiver room. So how much can those guys improve? How much can Chris Brazell, make an impact right away? All those things to me will be really interesting. And obviously, there's a lot on the offensive line, and they got to figure out something at the second offensive tackle spot. And heck, they might have it figured out by the time this is actually airing. But to me, when you're really looking at how Tennessee makes a jump and what they can do to help Nico, I got more questions and more high floor or low floor, high ceiling at the receiver than I necessarily do along the offensive line.
Yeah, if Tennessee has not addressed the second offensive tackle position by the time this airs, then that's not good, because
No.
it is, at the time of this recording, it is ready for publish, if you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. All right, when we come back, we're going to stay with Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider. We're going to talk about Tennessee basketball. What kind of makes this team go, and how far can this team go? More on that here they come on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, it is America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL regular season, it's done. Wild card weekend, it's done. We've got the divisional round of the NFL playoffs starting this weekend. Get excited, right? My team's not in it. My team didn't come anywhere close to the division round this year after winning the division for like 5 straight years, but we won't talk about that right now. You can have a whole lot of fun over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Put some coin in your pocket by going into FanDuelSportsbook.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. I've got hundreds of different bets to play with, total spreads, single in-game parlays, and more. Check out that new Explore tab so you can find the bet that is fun and engaging for you. Plus, with that promo code Locked On, new customers $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet. Win or lose, it's guaranteed. So what do you got to lose? It's America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Put some coin in your pocket today. NFL divisional round over there at FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, Ryan Schumpert returns here from Rocky Top Insiders. We take part in a Friday edition of Locked On Vols. Again, pre-recording this out of the country. If anything big's happened, we'll hit on it next week. But at the time of this recording, Tennessee coming off, an unfortunate loss in Mississippi State. Really, really good second half. Great second half effort from Dalton Connect. Zakai Ziegler played well all night long. But, it's not a horrible loss, but it's a loss that you weren't anticipating. We'll see how Tennessee responds in Athens. And, of course, there's another game by the time this airs. But from what you've seen so far of Tennessee basketball, kind of what's your synopsis on, who this team is, not just on good days or bad days, kind of where are they?
Well, I like this team. I think they're improved over last year's team. To me, I think the sample size is enough to say that they are a definitively much better offensive team, which they're not as good defensively, but that's what everybody was looking for, a little bit more balance and not having to win every game by getting in a rock fight and kind of grinding it out. So I like that with this Tennessee team. That doesn't mean they're not going to have scoring droughts. Doesn't mean they're not going to have some games where their offense looks bad. Certainly, it looked just abysmal in the first half of Mississippi State. And I think the thing that maybe to me the most stands out about this team is they have a lot. Consistency is the name of the game in college basketball, and we're recording this at the end of a week that Kansas lost to UCF on the road, and Houston lost to Iowa State, and Marquette lost to Butler, and you're seeing how hard it is to win on the road, and how hard it is even for your good players to get them consistent on night in, night out. And to me, that's kind of the same story with this Tennessee team, where I think they probably have 6 players that I think are real solid players, and 5 of those guys that on any given night can go for 20 points and carry you offensively, but you just don't know that you're going to get that from every single player or any of those players on any given night. And that can be frustrating. That makes it, I think, harder to win on the road. That makes it easier to lay duds. But, on the same time, that's the recipe of having different guys that can pick you up and different guys that can carry you. And to me, that's a way that you can make a deep run in March. The flip side of that is you have a game where only one of those guys is playing well. You can lose early in March.
Yeah.
So That's kind of where I stand on this team. You continue to search for more consistency and more answers on the road. To me, that'll be the more telling sign. I think I'd be very surprised if Tennessee loses more than one game at home, but on the road, can they be more consistent than they've been in the past? Certainly Mississippi State was a good example to get a big win there. But they'll have a lot of other games kind of in that same tier. I kind of circle Arkansas and Texas A&M as two I think will be somewhat similar to that Mississippi State game, and then Alabama and Kentucky is the two that will be very tough for Tennessee to go on the road and win.
Along with everything that you just said in terms of what needs to happen, not in, not out, consistency and all that, I feel like if Tennessee wants to accomplish its goals and go farther than any other Tennessee team has ever gone in the tournament, only one Elite Eight appearance, no Final Fours. Rick Barnes himself, only one Final Four. Certainly the potential, obviously, but if Tennessee wants to reach those goals, Shump, I feel like Tennessee's got to start incorporating another big man in there. I mean, look at the other night. Your two bigs fouled out. I mean, it was a physical football game. It was physical basketball. I do that all the time, by the way. And you really haven't brought along anybody else to kind of go in there and steal you 4 or 5 minutes if needed. Do you see that maybe changing? Do you see potentially, if Gainey continues to struggle, and again, 2 games we've already played by the time this airs, do you see Freddie DeLeon stealing some of those minutes? I mean, in terms of the rotation, do you see any of it kind of changing as we move on towards into conference play?
Well, I'll start with the big men, and I think that's a good point, and probably the thing that I left out the most in that first part, where Tennessee's 4 losses this year, they've struggled defending guys in the post. And granted, they've played, Hunter Dickinson and Zach Edey are probably 2 best postmen in the country,
Yep.
and Tolu Smith and Armando Bacot are certainly in the top 10, if not better than that. And the rest of the regular season, they'll see one more guy like that. But you worry about that as you look to the tournament and you look to, all right, who do they draw? Who do they have to go through? That's kind of the one thing that you'd say you don't want to see. And, we recorded this a couple hours after I watched Tennessee basketball practice today. And certainly there was a lot of emphasis on JP Estrella and Cade Phillips, the 2 freshman big men, being coached hard, trying to get those guys to come along. And, I don't anticipate either of them stepping up into some huge role. But to your point, that's all you need. You need 5, 7, 8 minutes. And, at the bare minimum, you need to get one of those guys to be able to come in and just get some fouls for you, because you have 2 guys that you trust, and you can't have them be fouling out, and you can't have them having to play, Tobe Walker the last 5 minutes of the game, he fouls out with 14 seconds. The last 5 minutes, he's the only guy you have, and he's out there playing with 4 fouls, trying his hardest to guard an elite guy without fouling, and it's hard to do that. You got to be able to play with some physicality and risk getting called for a foul and not having to kind of back down. So, yes, I think that's coming, at least at the bare minimum, of somebody coming in to eat fouls and in those games. You might not see it from a night in, night out basis, because I think Tennessee wants to play small, and for most teams they play, and then certainly in SEC play, I think they can get by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think long term, that's an issue. Jordan Gainey struggles, and certainly Freddie DeLeon is a guy you automatically turn to there. He looked good the other night, and what wasn't more than 3 or 4 minutes of running the first half, but the defense is what stood out, and that's been the big question mark for him. And to me, the thing with him more than anything was Guy Ziegler's out there. He's playing at an elite level right now, and that makes it hard to take him out of the game. But he's been playing 35-plus minutes, and if anybody can do it, it's the Guy Ziegler. But you don't want to have to ask him to do that for, even at this point, what's going to be, 19 games before the NCAA tournament starts. That's a hard ask. And I think where it starts with Freddie DeLeon is however many minutes a game that is, you hope to be able to steal more. But for 4, 5, 6, 7, to me, he should be the backup point guard. It's just, especially if Gainey's shot's not falling, to me, Gainey's not so much of a better defender than DeLeon that it just makes him, it overcomes the fact that DeLeon can create more offensively and he can handle the ball better. And I don't think DeLeon plays great off the ball, so him and Zakai on the court together, I don't necessarily think they mesh perfect. But if Jordan Gainey is going to shoot the ball as poorly as he has as of late, at the same time, maybe DeLeon can steal some of those minutes, because that certainly makes Gainey a lot worse playing off the ball when you don't have him as a threat to hit some shots from the perimeter.
The long basketball season, and as we've seen in the last couple of years, man, Tennessee was sprinting towards the tournament, got out in the second round. Tennessee was limping to the tournament, goes to the Sweet 16. That's basketball for you. Another long season that's not even started yet, still a couple weeks away, is Tennessee baseball. What does Ron Schumpert think the Tennessee baseball team can be heading into the 2024 campaign? That and a whole lot more. It's coming up next as we continue here with the Friday Locked On Vols. All right, boys and girls, game time. You shouldn't have to worry about those tickets, buying those tickets. If you're a procrastinator like me, sometimes you forget about the tickets and you're already planning to go to the event or to the show or to the concert or whatever. Game Time has got you. It's got me as well. For procrastinators that forget to do it, they sell tickets on the Game Time app up until an hour after the event even starts. We're talking stuff at the Bijou Theater downtown, Tennessee Theater, Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center, Neyland Stadium for football, Lindsey Nelson for baseball, all that and more. It's not just sports. It's literally any event in your area. You can find those tickets on the Game Time app. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's really, really simple. Plus, they got the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. They have got your back. Learn more about all three of those things by downloading the Game Time app today. Zone deals as well, where you can pick a section of the Game Time picks. You can pick a section. Game Times will pick the seats for big time savings. All that and more is offered on this app. So I encourage you to download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Create that account. Promo code Locked On, LOCKON, for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so a couple of weeks left, and then it will be baseball time in Tennessee. They're going to start the season out in Arlington at the Shriners Invitational, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I would imagine somebody from y'all's crew, maybe Jack, is going to go again. Have you guys made plans to go out there and cover that event?
That is the tentative plan. Yeah, we haven't booked flights and hotels and all that good stuff, but that's our plan for Jack to go cover it for us.
I'm a little broke right now, so neither have I, but I plan on being there. But it's going to start, man, and then it is a couple of weekdays, and the first couple of weeks of the season, they'll play 2 midweek games, and it's every single weekend, and it's here, man. Big questions, obviously. The last 2 years, you've been fortunate to have pitching ad nauseum, and I think there's a lot of good options on this team. They're unproven, and we just got to see what they can do. But you've got one of your big three who's remaining, and that's Drew Beam. You like the promise of A.J. Russell, but he only threw 30 innings and a third last year, but he's going to figure in there to be that second starter. You might not know who that third starter is for the first month of the year, but a lot of options. And then, there's oodles of options for the bullpen. As far as pitching, what are your thoughts kind of entering this season on? It might not be as dominant per se, but I still think it's going to be pretty good.
It's a lot of what you just said, honestly, where I think Tennessee, and certainly a good element of Tennessee's baseball fan base, is they're new to college baseball, and they were pretty spoiled the last few years, where you kind of knew who your guys were, and that's just, that's not the reality of how it is for even most really good top 10 SEC teams. Where
look at LSU, look at Arkansas last year. I mean, how many times did we go on the weekend where it was so and so TBA? I mean, that's just. At Tennessee, we're throwing out a TBA. It was just to troll the other team. I mean, that's kind of the nature of the beast.
100%. And certainly they're not going to have any sort of answers there until SEC play begins. And frankly, right now, sitting here, what's the date? January 12th that we're recording this. I would probably guess even in the SEC play, that'll be a little bit of a question. And Nate Snead, the Wichita State transfer, I think has the high-end talent that makes him, an intriguing option to be a third starter, but by no means do I think he's any sort of shoe-in. And this is almost a year where I could see Tennessee having a lot more openers, in an SEC weekend where you're just trying to get 3 or 4 innings from someone. And look, Will Heflin in the 2021 season was the most elite version of that, where you felt pretty good that he was going to get you 2 times through the order and be solid. So it's not like that's completely new to Tennessee. The question to me is just more who truly grabs that, and then how does it all work out? Because at the same time, some of these options that you have are guys that are going to be more effective. Maybe your best pitcher is more effective in rolls out of the bullpen. So it's almost a puzzle piece. They have a lot of guys that I think are solid and maybe not necessarily great, but certainly you have tremendous amount of trust and Frank Anderson to get all that figured out. And to me, A.J. Russell is the big piece of the puzzle, because if he can be the guy that I think everybody at Tennessee expects, not necessarily without some, bumps along the road, but certainly has really high-end talent and can be a really good weekend guy. If he does that, it becomes a lot more simple of figuring out one day and putting all those pieces together. if he struggles and you got to start kind of finding answers for 2 days of the weekend besides Drew Beam Day, which everybody assumes will be Friday night, then it becomes maybe a little more shaky and maybe you actually start talking about it being a problem.
Yeah, I mean, again, last couple of years, Tennessee last year technically had 5 starting pitchers. Tennessee technically had 5 starting pitchers the year before. I mean, I'm counting, Sewell is in that mix. Sewell started, the SEC tournament clinching start against Florida 2 years ago. He started the game against, gosh, I've slept since then. Whoever they played in the SEC tournament where they lost, he pitched really well this past year. I mean, he started games. AJ Russell is a guy that we're talking about now, but Andrew Lindsay is a guy that moved into the starting rotation last year. We know about Chase Burns and Dollander and Beam, and there's just
they
had a whole lot of
started
options
Ben Joyce for a game, in their SEC play in 22.
So it was almost like the last couple of years you're really forcing the hand to try to get these guys some runs, and you're trying to throw an inning every midweek start, and you might not be in that situation this year. But again, that's the biggest question entering the year, and it's nothing abnormal. Most teams around the country are going into the season with these questions as well. Let's get to that lineup, man. Billy Amick, I feel like, is going to be a stud. Cannon Peebles, his bat is going to be really good. I'm intrigued to see how he continues to progress at catcher. If he's going to be the guy that gets the bulk of the innings behind the plate, especially early on. But that bat's going to be in the lineup somewhere. About Simo, Christian Moore, Blake Burke. Are we going to see him kind of be more like his freshman self? Hunter Inslee in the outfield. I mean, list goes on, and I didn't even mention a lot of these guys. I still love this lineup, still love what they can throw out there defensively, and it's going to not an easy out in the lineup, really.
No, and it should be really vastly improved from last year where there just wasn't a ton of high-end options, and Tennessee really had to lean on that pitching to get them to Omaha. And, that even when Tennessee got to Omaha, it didn't feel like there was much path to a deep run just because the offense wasn't good enough. I think that changes this year. And again, there's still a lot of storylines with it because of where does everybody fit. And even though there's so much to like what they returned 3 starters, I guess 4, Cal Stark being the 4th behind the plate, but we obviously know Cannon Peebles is going to be the starting catcher, and we'll see what happens with Zane Denton too. I guess that would be another returning starter as well, but no clear shortstops on the roster. Does it end up being one of the newcomers, one of the JUCO, one of the freshman guys, or did they slide Christian Moore over there? And how does that work out with second base? And it's a lot of, and even in the outfield with Dylan Driley and Kavaris Steers, those are 2 guys I'd be shocked if they're not in the lineup, opening day. But how does that all fit together? How it's, again, kind of like I was talking about with the pitching. It's a little bit of a puzzle of finding out where your best options are, what makes your best lineup, and how does that all fit together defensively. So I think we have a really good idea of maybe 11, 12 guys going into the season of these are going to be your guys. And probably 7 of them, for sure, 6 or 7 of them, for sure. But how do those other spots work out? There's a lot of versatility with guys that can play corner infield, corner outfield. Obviously, we just talked about Christian Moore, whether he ends up at shortstop, and the middle infield stuff I think can be tinkered with a lot. It's going to make really this whole first month of the season before SEC play really fascinating, just because every day I think you can see, while maybe a lot of the same guys are in the starting lineup, they're at different spots in the field, and Tennessee trying to figure out a lot of things.
And Reese Chapman's a guy you didn't even mention the outfield. He's going to be in there trying to get as much playing time. You've got Dalton Bargo, who I think is going to be just such a secret weapon for this team. Said corner infield, corner outfield, behind the plate. He can do it all. And he hit, help me, 280 last year.
Yeah, I think 275 something. I wrote about it earlier today. 275, 5 homers, something like that, and kind of an off and on starting role at DH as a true freshman.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of growth, and that was one of the things Tennessee was highest on when they got him, of just how high his ceiling was and how much more they thought he could improve.
So, Tennessee's got options galore. And again, by the time this airs, I'm hoping that there's going to be some finality to the Zane Denton situation. If he's back with the team, I don't think he's your everyday third baseman. I think it's more utility, and I think it's more vying for DH spots. But still, a guy who had 59 RBI, you'd love to have that guy back in the fold. So, we'll see what happens, man. I mean, they're deep. They're deep in spots for sure.
Certainly, and I think Denton, Bargo, and Chapman are probably kind of the 3 X factors that change how things kind of find itself because of where the DH is going to come from. Where if Chapman's hit, you feel really confident you're going to have Inslee. and you're going to have Dreiling starting, at 2 spots in the outfield. And I'd be real surprised if Kavares Tears isn't in the lineup, but, Reese Chapman or Bargo could force your hand being so good of, pushing Tears to that DH spot. And then certainly Zane Denton kind of gives you a logjam of some degrees at the corner infield spots, but that's a good problem to have. And certainly a lot of different options, and especially like you said, corner infield, corner outfield. It feels like it could go a million different directions, but a lot of different talented guys that have really high ceilings.
Then you have a guy that hit 28 home runs in junior college last year, and Robin Villanueva just sitting there ready to play first base if Blake Burke forgets how to hit a curveball. So it's like, again, you're super stacked. All right, man, it's busy time. Basketball season ongoing. Football season's always a conversation over there at Rocky Top Insider year-round, just like it is with us at VolQuest. And then we got baseball coming up. What do you guys got coming up the rest of January on into February?
Yeah, a lot of stuff kind of putting a final bow in probably by the time this is airing, Tennessee's offseason football roster movement. And as Tennessee starts to get into spring semester starting, obviously very late for Tennessee, and they start to get into workouts in the winter. We'll have a lot of stuff putting a final bow, analyzing a lot of stuff, what to like, what kind of areas of concern still, and then Tennessee basketball season will be chugging away, and baseball just gets closer and closer and closer. So we'll start to have full season previews and stuff like that on the site, and then Jack Foster and I will be back with our Tennessee baseball podcast to get things going as well. So plenty of stuff. It's one of the more exciting times of the year, which is not something you typically think about when you're thinking on the global picture of late January, early February being super exciting. But then it's a new age of college football. It's a different beast of the calendar of how that works. And then certainly baseball and basketball is real fun in these parts, as Rick Barnes and Tony Vitello have their respective programs humming along at a high level.
His grandfather was an absolute legend at Central High School. Ryan Schumpert, he's a good writer of words. Give him a follow on Twitter at @Shump00 on the X. Ryan, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Enjoyed it as always.
All right, that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Thanks so much for being here. We'll come back with the Monday show, and then I'll be back in real time and can talk about real updated things Tuesday on. But hope you guys enjoyed all the guests this week. Hope you guys had a really, really good week, and can't wait to talk to you guys again next week. Fun times happening right now. Tennessee football, roster management, Tennessee basketball, and, of course, Tennessee baseball is right around the corner. We'll talk about it all right here every day on Locked On Vols.